If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
Some families have odd or even dark secrets. Mine has a bit of both, although I never really knew this until I was much older. I know that I shouldn't be surprised though, as people tend to not tell children much, as they don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. It was like that for my brother Jacob and I. Even though we were very close in age, we definitely were treated very differently. Our father treated us the same, but our mother and grandparents never did. Oh, my name is Jeremy, by the way, and I was born first. For the first few years, things were great, or at least I remember it that way. But then one day, Jacob was born, and not long afterwards, our grandparents moved in with us. After that, things changed drastically. It was little things at first. My mother used to play with me all the time, but suddenly she was always too busy. Hello, Mama, do you want to play tag with me? Please?
Why would I want to?
But you never want to play with me anymore. Ever since Jacob was born, you don't care about me.
Of course I don't. Why would I?
It really hurt to hear things like that, and sadly she wasn't the only one to be mean to me. Until they moved in, I hadn't known my grandparents, and I wish that had never changed, as they were even worse than my mother. They were very cruel. Hello, grandmother and grandfather?
Oh, it's you. What are you still doing here? If you were my child, I would have given you up for adoption years ago. Such an ugly and stupid child.
At first, I thought that maybe my grandparents and mother were just mean and cruel to everyone, but they always treated Jacob like he could do no wrong, like he was a saint. If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
I'm sorry, Mama.
Oh, it's okay. You didn't mean to. Are you okay, though?
Well, it scared me. But yeah, I'm okay.
That's okay. Let's get you a new toy. That will help you to feel better.
Sadly, they were also just as cruel to my father as well. I couldn't understand why they were such terrible people. The older I got, the worse they behaved. When I turned 15, they forced me to get a job and then forced me to give them my paychecks. It was so annoying, and they justified it by saying that I owed them for all the food and clothes that I had used over the years. It was either that or they would demand that I start to pay rent. They did, however, give me a small amount back as an allowance. It was so insulting, but there wasn't anything that I could do about it. Or at least that's what I thought. I remember one time when I came home from work and my paycheck was smaller than usual, and my grandfather became angry with me because of it. I had been sick for a few days and had to miss both school and work as a result, which meant my check had fewer hours on it. My grandfather didn't care though. What is the meaning of this? Are you trying to steal from us? Why is this smaller than usual? I'm sorry, grandfather, but I missed some shifts because I was sick, so I got paid for fewer hours. That's not my problem. Why are you so weak that you can't work just because of a little cold? Do you expect that the bank will give us a break on the mortgage just because you had the sniffles? He then threatened to never let it happen again, and then he punched me and gave me a black eye. The next day, I went into work, and my coworker asked how I had gotten the black eye, and I was so tired of lying about such injuries that I told him in confidence how I had gotten it. Buddy, that's insane. You need to report them to the police. No one should have to go through that kind of torment. I can't. If I do, then my family will be split apart. I would rather just put up with it until I'm 18 and then leave. But what about your dad? Do you really think it's fair that you should leave and let him continue to suffer? Isn't he getting abused too? He had a point, actually. My grandparents and mother did tend to hit him from time to time as well. I knew then that I had to do something, but it took me a bit before I came up with an actual plan. A week later, though, it struck me. I just needed to build an airtight case about all the abuse that they were heaping on us, and so I began recording every time they yelled at either of us, or they hit or slapped one of us. Sadly, it didn't take all that long before I had dozens of videos and pictures of the abuse. I didn't want to surprise my father, so I approached him with what I had and asked him to make sure he was on board with taking my evidence to the police. This is most of what I have. It should be enough to put them in prison, or at the very least, to get them out of the house and away from us. Yes, I agree. And I'm sorry that I didn't do anything over all these years. I was just afraid that if I had, that your mother would have sent you away. I don't get it, though. Why has Mom and her parents always been so cruel to me and you, and not to Jacob? Well, you're old enough to know the truth. You see, both Jacob and you are my sons, but you have different mothers. I dated a woman just before, and she became pregnant without my knowing it. We broke up, and a year after you were born, she came to me and told me that she couldn't afford to keep you. And so even though it would put a strain on our marriage, your mother and I agreed to take you in and raise you. After Jacob was born, your grandparents found out about this, and they hated you since you weren't truly family in their minds. And what about my real mom? I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in many years, but at any rate, you've done an amazing job. We need to take this to the police right away and press charges against the three of them. And so we did just that. It took a bit of convincing, as the officers found it hard to believe that a man was allowing himself and his son to be abused by his wife and in-laws. But with the mountain of evidence that I had gathered, they began to come around. There was so much evidence, in fact, that they immediately went and arrested my mother and grandparents. It was such a relief to finally have them out of the house. But then the trials began, and at first things seemed rather bleak. My grandparents' lawyer made the case that they were old and senile and hadn't understood that what they were doing was wrong, and so they got off with just a warning and were released into my father's custody. As for my mother, though, her lawyer didn't have the same success, and although he tried to justify her behavior, her judge wasn't having any of it, and he sentenced her to 10 years in prison. On top of that, my father's lawyer filed for divorce and stated that she had breached the conditions of their prenuptial agreement. She had abused both my father and I, and as such, she wasn't entitled to either the house or the children, and my father was awarded both in the divorce. Unfortunately, he couldn't go after her for alimony, though, because she was heading to prison, and he had always been the breadwinner in the family. But he was happy enough to have her gone and out of his life. When it came to her parents, though, he had no love for them at all, and he placed them in one of the worst old age homes we had in the city. I know for a fact that they hate it there. It doesn't help that they are terrible people, and that they constantly argue and fight with the employees, though. Even though it isn't a high-class place, their constant bickering with the staff only makes it worse for them. That did Jacob with us, and he wasn't very pleased with the new power structure in the family. Knowing this, my father sent him away to military school. It pained him to do so, but he knew that Jacob needed some tough love to realize that things needed to change, and that his mother and grandparents had spoiled and ruined him. I'm happy to say that after years of military school, Jacob came back a changed man, and we have both even grown to become not only great brothers to one another, but also best of friends as well. He's even going to be my best man at my wedding next year. And if that wasn't enough good news. Soon after all the trials were wrapped up, my father hired a private investigator to find my real mom, and he did. It turns out that she still lived close by and had wanted to reach out for years, but had been worried that doing so could split our family up. With my evil mother and grandparents out of the way, I was finally able to get to know my real mother. It does feel weird to have such a strange and mixed family, but since Jacob's mother and our grandparents were taken out of the picture, things have only gotten better and better. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. God, why did they have to stop segregation? Mr. Smith, the answer is dp over dt equals 200. Well, it seems you are correct, but black kids don't have any bit of brain in their heads.
Hey, I'm Aurora, and this is the story of how I was able to help one of my closest friends get revenge on our racist and creepy teacher. It's quite an interesting story, really, and I'm happy to share it with you all. So, I first met Jalen when I was a sophomore, but he'd just started high school. About half of the school year had ended and he'd just transferred in from another school. My first impression was that Jalen was a pretty quiet kid, and he was very lonely, so I decided to go up to him and start a conversation. Hey, I'm Aurora. What's your name?
I'm Jalen. Can I ask you how I can get to my next class?
Sure. I'll even walk you if you like. He was a very nice kid, and soon enough, we traded numbers and even worked on some homework assignments together. Because Jalen was incredibly smart, he was ahead of his grade and was in my math class, which was calculus. He also just treated everybody with kindness, and I think that's what gained everybody, including the teacher's respect. But when the next year started, everything changed. Jalen and I found out that we were in the same class, which was awesome. The downside was that the teacher was the most horrid man you could ever meet. I've got a lot to say about him, so hang in there. This man's name was Mr. Smith, and he was just not a pleasant man in general. First of all, his classwork was just insanely difficult, and only the smartest of the smartest kids in the class could just barely pass with an A. He was incompetent when it came to communication with the students as well. Overall, people did not like him, but they had no choice but to act like they at least tolerated his existence, since the teachers were oblivious to his personality. I'd heard about Mr. Smith from his former students, but nothing could ever prepare me and Jalen for what we were going to experience. Right as the school year started, Mr. Smith told Jalen to sit at a desk in the far back of the room, which was already weird. Jalen and I shot glances at each other when Mr. Smith did this for the only other dark-skinned student as well. He then started to seat us in a very abnormal pattern. The white kids were in the front, with Asians and Latino students in the middle of the class. However, Mr. Smith put me in the front of the class. But I was Asian. Okay, strange. I decided to not dwell too much on this seating arrangement and see how Mr. Smith was going to teach first. And boy, was the first experience insane.
I'm Mr. Smith. We are jumping right into our first lesson. Mr. Smith, I think you're on Unit 3? Too bad. You keep talking when I'm trying to teach. I'm glad I put the bad kid in the back. I knew you'd be up to no good. But the other kids are welcome to ask questions.
I was completely flabbergasted. Did this teacher really have the audacity to call Jalen a bad student because of confusion? And the way he decided to skip the most crucial parts of the course was crazy. For the rest of the period, the kids asked him questions while he answered them nicely, but completely ignored Jalen and the other girl, Michaela, who tried so many times to even get his attention. And after his entire lesson, in which half the class got lost on, he gave us a pop quiz. We got our results immediately, and to my surprise, I failed miserably. This wasn't possible. I'd been trying my best to pay attention the whole time. I began asking the class around. Every student in the class got low D's or C's, while Jalen and Michaela had low F's. I reviewed my answers with other students, and despite getting almost the same answers as them, I got a lower grade than them. Jalen's answers were mostly all correct, but the mark said that he'd failed. This just didn't add up. The next day, Michaela immediately transferred out of the class, which was good for her. Unfortunately, the school didn't let Jalen do the same for whatever reason. Mr. Smith just got worse and worse as the year went on. Mr. Smith would blatantly say that he didn't like the way Jalen talked or looked at him. The teacher would also comment on how Jalen probably cheated his way into the class, because apparently, kids like him weren't capable of having a higher IQ. It's stupid reasoning, honestly.
Kids that look like you are always stupid. You can always tell from the skin. Shut up and sit down before I give you a referral.
Now, wasn't this just insane? Mr. Smith continued to give other kids passing grades while Jalen and I's grades suffered. But while Mr. Smith berated Jalen constantly, he seemed to have nothing against me. One day, I decided to talk to my teacher and ask him what was going on. Mr. Smith, can I ask you why I got a 25% on this assignment? I triple-checked and my answers were correct.
Well, you seem like a very nice girl. I'll see if I can change your grade.
And what about Jalen? He got a perfect score as well, but you gave him a 0.
Who cares about Jalen? You and I both know that black kids like him don't make it anywhere in life. You're a pretty little girl. Keep away from that boy. He will just ruin you. I'll change your grade for you just because you're special and so beautiful. Don't tell anybody.
Well, that definitely sounded threatening. This just kept going and going and going as the days rolled by. My grades were changed, but Mr. Smith also started acting a little weirder towards me, but more racist towards Jalen.
Jalen, I told you to stop talking right this instant. Sir, that was Mike, not me. Mike is a good kid. This behavior is only going to get you into prison later on. You've probably already been in juvenile hall a few times. God, why did they have to stop segregation? Mr. Smith, the answer is dp over dt equals 200. Well, it seems you are correct, but black kids don't have any bit of brain in their heads. I'm issuing you a detention from cheating off my other students.
Oh, hell nah. This was getting too far, and why didn't any other student try and speak up for Jalen? Jalen and I decided to confront Mr. Smith right after class. When the bell rang, the other students quickly got up and left while Jalen and I waited. I got up and walked to Mr. Smith's desk. Mr. Smith, I think treating Jalen like trash and underestimating his abilities is a really scummy move, especially since you're a teacher and Jalen is one of your students.
Sir, I'm sorry if you feel any sort of discomfort towards me, but I am simply trying to learn like everybody else. How dare you think it is right to talk to me? Don't you get it? I see you as nothing. You will be nothing. You will do nothing. You will eat nothing. You will make nothing. Why would I waste my time on someone that I know is going to fail in life anyway? Get out before I call in security. But Aurora, wait.
Jalen quickly left the room in anger. I was very confused, but I obeyed. I was still fuming from everything that the math teacher had said to my friend, and I was just about ready to punch him square in the face. Maybe I could go talk to a counselor instead to sort out this situation.
How many times have I told you not to stand up for that black kid? He's only going to drag you down. Maybe I'll have to punish a naughty girl like you. You'd like that, huh?
What the hell? I immediately felt weirded out and made some lame excuse before leaving. I knew that Jalen and I had to take this into our own hands. So not only was Mr. Smith an ignorant and racist being, but he was also a creep. I went over to his house and we started thinking of a plan. What should we do?
I'm not sure at all. Wait.
I watched curiously as Jalen ran out of the room, coming back a minute later with a pen and a tiny phone. How's this gonna help?
Well, this pen actually has a microphone inside it, and I can easily hide the phone so that I won't get caught. I can videotape, and maybe you can have the pen so the microphone can pick his insults up better.
Sounds good. Where do you even find a microphone pen?
I have my ways.
We had our plan ready, and we were definitely going to get our evidence. Better sooner than later. The next day, we walked into class and waited for it to start. I turned on the pen Jalen gave me, and he started the camera. Mr. Smith walked in and almost immediately started throwing his insults.
Mr. Jalen, the color of your skin really infuriates me sometimes. But you might be a little lucky today. I'm going to be pounding on the whole class for yesterday's quiz results.
Although Mr. Smith claimed that he was going to bully the whole class today, he quickly switched back to harassing Jalen again.
Jalen, how does a black kid get 85% on a math test? Haven't I warned you enough not to cheat? They should make physical punishments legal again. That way, I could teach you a lesson like how they taught your ancestors. What? Mr. Smith, that's a really unconventional thing to say. You need to stop racially profiling me and being racist. All I'm trying to do is just learn. Oh my goodness! Now the minority comes crying and blaming somebody else for their own faults. I know damn well you cheat, but you play the victim card so you could get me in trouble.
Mr. Smith.
Why don't you get on the football team and do something useful with yourself rather than trying to be something you're not? Stupid kid. Shut up before I send you to the counselors again.
Obviously, Jalen and I were absolutely fuming. For the rest of the class, I recorded a few more of our teacher's very bold statements. And as soon as class ended, the two of us ran out to the front office. We plugged in the phone and microphone to the secretary's computer, showing her that we needed to see the principal immediately. She let us go in since the principal was available at the moment. We walked in with the evidence and explained to Principal Lacey everything that Mr. Smith had done. She appeared a little shocked at first, but upon seeing the video and hearing what he said, she was just as mad by the end of our story. Principal Lacey signed us out of school early and allowed us to just leave, which was nice. She promised that she'd help do something about it. The next day, Jalen and I walked slowly to math class. We were afraid of what we'd see. To our surprise, a notice on the door stated that Mr. Smith would be out of the office for a few weeks for emergency reasons. We looked at each other. Was he finally going to get kicked from the school? We soon heard around that Principal Lacey had walked straight into Mr. Smith's next class and begun playing the video in front of the whole class. Mr. Smith turned totally red and panicked while trying to explain himself. One of the students even recorded the situation, and what happened was exactly what the rumor was. It was hilarious. Mr. Smith ended up getting fired with his teaching license revoked. I also told people about his creepy behavior towards me, and other students also spoke about him being creepy towards them. Nothing was done about this situation, but because everybody knew what a terrible person he was, many parents protested him about even living in our city. We ended up getting a new teacher, and he was the best person ever. He was compassionate to the whole class and helped us get good grades. He even specially helped Jalen get A's on the grades that Mr. Smith had messed up purposefully. Mr. Smith ended up moving to a small town to try and at least tutor kids, but the rumor spread around so much that he ended up jobless. We heard the wife was so pissed and divorced him, taking along their 5-year-old son. Mr. Smith now is depressed and jobless. Jalen and I have gotten closer than ever, and this year, we are applying for college. Sophomore year was a crazy journey, but we made it through with some happy outcomes. Thanks for listening to my story, and what do you think?
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. So let me start off by saying that my name is Josh, and I haven't always had the easiest life. Thankfully, I was raised by some of the loveliest parents around. They have always been incredibly supportive. Even my brother Abe and I have an amazing relationship. The thing that has made my life challenging, though, was that I was in a terrible accident when I was younger. I was playing in an abandoned building when a canister of chemicals fell on me and damaged my eyes so much that I was left blind for the rest of my life. I have to admit that I found my new life terrifying, and I really didn't know how I could possibly live the rest of my life without my sight. It sent me into a deep depression, and it took me many years before I finally was able to dig my way out of all the self-pity and helplessness that I was feeling. Eventually, I did indeed find a way to live my life, and even found a way to actually be able to live my life to the fullest. To start with, I had to find something that I could do for a living, and Abe suggested that I start up a vlog. At first, it sounded silly, but I eventually came around to the idea and started one, and it has made all the difference in the world. I had never thought that people would want to watch me live my life, but that I could also make a career out of it. I use several apps to make it possible for me to interact with my audience. Apps that read out comments to me, as well as convert my speech to text for when I want to comment back. Plus, my parents and Abe all help me when I can't use such apps. You would be surprised how user-friendly technology has become to people like myself. As you might imagine, meeting people became quite difficult as well, but the more comfortable that I became with my disability, the more independent that I became. However, Abe didn't have that excuse. Abe was always a very charming and attractive man, but had bad luck when it came to picking women. He had a bad habit of dating women that were pretty but were awful people. He was such a good person and just couldn't see anything negative in other people. So when he called me up and told me that he had started dating someone, I was a bit skeptical. Hey bro, how's life? Pretty good. How about yourself? Great, actually. I met an amazing woman that I know that you and our parents will love. Oh yeah, that's great. When do we get to meet her? Tonight, actually. Considering his past relationships, I wasn't expecting much, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. As I was dropped off by a cab, I was finishing up a live stream from the day. I had taken my seeing eye dog to the park and was telling people all about the program where I got her. It was important to me to bring awareness to the wonderful program that I got her from. As I was nearing the end of the stream, I got into a cab that would take me to my parents' house. The driver informed me that he had pulled up in front of the sidewalk that led to the front porch, and I paid him and stepped out. As I was leaving the car, I placed my walking stick down and started walking the front door, when my dog indicated that there was someone standing a few feet in front of me and that I should stop moving. I could hear her turn around and sigh heavily.
Oh, whoa there. Can't you see where you're going? You almost hit me with that stick of yours.
Unless my dog isn't doing her job right, I should be several feet away from you.
Oh, you're blind. That explains why you were heading to the wrong house.
I had a bad feeling in my stomach. Something told me that this woman was Abe's new girlfriend, and we were already off to a bad start. I quickly told my audience that I would be ending the stream for the day and turned off my phone.
Oh my god. Not only are you blind, but you're one of those so-called influencers too? Did you just say goodbye to the 3 people that follow you? It's no wonder that someone as poor as you would be trying to get sympathy from people in such a rich neighborhood as this.
I actually have over 2 million followers, and there were over 200 in that stream. But listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot.
Honestly, I don't care. You can just leave now, because when my boyfriend arrives, he's gonna kick your butt. So you better just move on. He's wealthy and belongs here, unlike you.
Just then, I heard Abe approaching. I knew it was him by the scent of his cologne. He always wore too much, and it was always the same brand. Hey bro, looks like you already met the love of my life. Michelle, let me formally introduce you to my brother Josh. Josh, this is Michelle. Yes, we met. Maybe we should just head inside and introduce her to our folks. Although I can't see, I'm pretty observant about the world, and I could feel the shift in the mood. Michelle had been taken by surprise, and Abe was oblivious to the tension that she had created. The silence spoke volumes. After a few awkward seconds, we went into the house. Our parents greeted us there, and things went fairly smoothly until dinner. I went to sit in my usual spot and found that my chair had been moved. As a blind person, having things in consistent locations makes my life a great deal easier. I had thought that my mother was in the room, but it turned out to be Michelle. Hey Mom, can you help me find my seat? I didn't realize that you had rearranged things for our guest.
Oh, am I in your spot? I wanted to sit next to Abe. I didn't know there was assigned seating.
Of course that's okay. I just need to know when things change so that I can adjust accordingly.
I'll try to keep that in mind. It must be nice for you to come over, eat good food every so often.
I'm actually a good cook.
Well, no, I meant that. It must be nice to visit. People are well off like your parents and Abe. Being poor makes it hard to eat healthy and good food.
Things were not getting any better, and I could sense that Michelle was less than impressed with me. Plus, I was very confused why she was convinced that I was poor and that Abe was wealthy. While Abe wasn't remotely poor, he barely made half of what I did with my vlog. It didn't matter though, so long as Abe was happy.
Does your dog have to be in here with us? I don't want dog hair in my food.
It's my seeing eye dog, so yes. I'm sorry if her presence bothers you, but I need her with me. After that, Abe and our parents joined us in the dining room, and we all sat down and ate our meals. I chose to stay silent about Michelle's behavior, as I just assumed that maybe it was her being nervous. But as the months ticked by, she continued to be very rude to me. It hurt me to continue to stay silent, but Abe was so happy, and I didn't want to do or say anything that might jeopardize his happiness. But then he announced that he had proposed to Michelle, and my heart sank. This awful person was now going to be a member of our family permanently. The day before the wedding, we all gathered at the church for the rehearsal, and Abe had asked me to be his best man, and of course I had accepted. However, Michelle had made an incredible fuss over it, so much so that I thought for certain that Abe would finally see her for the terrible person that she was.
Well, yeah, it's okay if Josh is your best man, but does he have to bring his dog down the aisle with him? Couldn't we just have the maid of honor show him the way?
Yes, but his dog is important. Without his dog, he has no way of navigating through the world. And if the maid of honor ever has to do something, he will be left without any guidance at all.
Except I don't want that animal in any of our wedding photos. It's bad enough that he'll be wearing sunglasses the whole time.
I could tell that Abe was bothered by this, and I did appreciate him sticking up for me. In the end, Michelle relented and allowed me to have my guide dog, although I didn't trust her, and sure enough the next day, I found out that I was right not to. As the ceremony began, I couldn't find my guide dog, no matter how much I called for her. However, the ceremony had to begin, and so I allowed the maid of honor to escort me. It was so jarring and worrying to stand up at the altar without my guide dog. I felt truly blind in that moment, and tried to hide my panic as best as I could. Abe squeezed my hand and held it in support of me. Suddenly, though, my mother came up to me and handed me the leash to my dog. "Oh, thank you, Mom. Where was she? Is she okay?" I could tell by the tone in her voice that something was upsetting her. She did not sound happy at all.
We found her locked in a closet in Michelle's changing room.
But how did she get there?
Oh, I think we both know how.
She was right. There was no other way around it. Michelle had locked my guide dog in her changing room so that she couldn't be a part of the wedding. This was a step too far, and I wanted to say something, but I waited until just the right moment. The ceremony began, and Michelle came down the aisle to meet us at the front of the church. The priest then began to speak, and when he said that famous line, I jumped in and spoke my piece. Should anyone present no of any reason that this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace. I object. This woman is an absolute monster, and a gold digger as well. Josh? What are you talking about?
Oh, will you just shut up, you horrible cripple? You're ruining my wedding.
No, Michelle! You ruined your own wedding by being a monster. Abe, Michelle has had issues with me since we first met. My guide dog was found in her dressing room, locked in her closet. She purposefully tried to keep her away, despite the fact that I need her with me at all times. Michelle, is this true?
Well, I mean, you can't prove that it was me that put her in there.
Plus, she is only marrying you because she thinks you're rich.
What do you mean? He is rich, unlike you.
No, I'm not. I mean, I do okay for myself, but compared to Josh and my parents, I'm not rich at all.
Wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying that you don't have as much money as this blind idiot?
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. I could hear her hit the bottom of the steps hard before she screamed in frustration and then ran out of the church. I counted my blessings that she hadn't successfully kicked my guide dog and that she had made a massive fool out of herself in the process. I felt so bad that I had ruined his wedding, but Abe assured me that I had done him a massive favor. As it turned out, Michelle was drowning in debt and had seen Abe as a way to escape that debt because she thought that he was rich and would pay for her to be debt-free and to have a lavish lifestyle. Had he married her, he would have been ruined financially. It was true that he made good money, but she owed more money than he could ever afford to pay off, and the minimum payments alone would have drained his bank account within a few months. Abe was so grateful that I had rescued him, but I felt angry at knowing that had things hadn't happened the way that they did, that he would have been completely ruined, and so I chose to do something that I normally wouldn't. Thankfully, Abe and Michelle had hired a videographer for the ceremony, and they had filmed the whole interaction. I managed to get a copy of the video, and I posted it to all of my social media accounts and put her on blast. The backlash against her was intense, but more than warranted. I begged my followers to not attack her, but to also not give her a chance to hurt anyone else. That anyone getting involved with her should know what kind of person that she actually was. As a result, I heard that she ended up losing her job as they saw the video and didn't want anything to do with someone that would attack a guide dog. I'm not sure what became of her, but the last I heard of her, she moved to another city and had even changed names. Honestly, she was just lucky that her kick missed though, as I would have pressed charges against her and ensured that she went to prison. Thankfully though, there is a happy ending to this story. Abe did eventually find someone that not only was a genuinely good person, but was a perfect fit for our family. In fact, she was the woman that had trained my guide dog. They truly do make the perfect couple, and knowing how happy they make each other has even made me wonder if I should begin trying to find someone to spend my life with as well. Perhaps I will. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
That's when the teenager kicked the police and tried to run towards me to attack me. But thankfully I had pepper spray in my purse and I pulled it out and sprayed him in the face. Hey, I'm Amelia, and I have a story to share with you all about this boastful teenager who thought he could get away with being a dangerous driver. It's a really funny story of mine. So I had recently had some big changes in my life. The first of which was the birth of my daughter, which was only about 2 months before this incident happened. Plus, I had literally just gotten a new car. So anyway, I was just driving down this street that was quite crowded. No matter the time of day, there were always cars on it. But it was rush hour at the time of the accident, which meant that it was even more crowded than usual. I was driving with the flow of traffic, which was close to the speed limit, because my daughter was in the back seat, and I didn't want anything to happen to her. Traffic came to a standstill, and I slowed down and stopped, and that's when it happened. We both lurched forward as someone rear-ended my car. My baby started wailing from the sudden impact, and I immediately steered my car over and onto the shoulder of the road so I would be out of traffic so that I could safely go and check on her and make sure that she was okay. The car behind us drove around my car and stopped right in front of it. It was almost as if the people inside were taunting me just by staying there. The car who had hit us was a sports car, and it had these dark windows. I couldn't tell who the driver was, but the vehicle was blasting loud music with a lot of heavy bass, so I could only assume the driver was a young person. I quickly ran to the rear door and opened, and was relieved that she was okay. I spent a few minutes soothing her, and when I was convinced that she wasn't hurt, I left her safe and inside the car. I then walked up to the other car before they could drive off, and I tapped on the window quite angrily. When the window rolled down, I was met with the smug face of this teenager. He had a lot of jewelry on, and he had a bunch of his loud friends screaming in the back seat. I was annoyed and decided to tell him off for hitting my car. Hey, are you listening?
What?
You just hit my car with my newborn inside it.
So?
You could potentially cause her some damage to the head. You should know better before hitting people's cars, too. Let me call your parents. The teenager started laughing and bragging about how his parents would never believe a word that I was saying. And I started explaining to him that I was going to call the police if he didn't do as I asked and let me talk to his parents.
Ha! You're such a Karen. I'm sure your stupid baby will be fine. Tommy, isn't this lady kind of crazy right now? Yeah, she's talking crazy. Maybe we should report her for harassing us. We're just teenagers trying to get home. Hear that, lady? Get out of here before we tell everyone that you're assaulting us.
I'm not doing this today. Give me your mom's number so I can call her. Now.
Jeez. Now she's just trying to steal my phone. What a weirdo.
I was so pissed off and I didn't know what to do. One of the teenager's friends had his phone ready to record, so I knew that I had to act very carefully or else I'd be in a lot of trouble. I went back to my car and called the police. I explained the situation and they said that they'd send an officer. The driver and his friend came out and started taunting me again by making faces, and I groaned in annoyance. After the call, I walked to the kid's car and stood there until the police came to make sure that they couldn't drive off while I waited. Soon enough, a police officer showed up. I explained the situation to him again, and the teenagers began to lie.
So, I hear that you boys hit this woman's car? She's insane. She's the one who stopped in the middle of the road, and it caused us to hit her.
That's not what happened.
Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Yeah, then she tried driving off like it was nothing, so we had to come around and block her from leaving. Is that so? Do either of you have insurance? I'll call my dad and check. Ma'am, I don't tolerate lying. I know nobody wants to be responsible and have to pay for someone else's damages, but you really were going to expect these teenagers to pay for your car repairs when you were the one at fault?
Sir, I'm serious when I say they're the ones who rear-ended me and tried leaving. My infant daughter is still in the back of my car and the impact was strong.
Should we call for medical assistance?
I think it's safer to do that.
But you understand you're still not getting away with putting the blame on those boys, correct?
It really wasn't me.
Tell that to the judge.
I was running out of time, and I knew that the police had more evidence in support of the teenager, and I really didn't know what to do. At this point, some pedestrians on the sidewalk had started to take videos of me arguing with the teenagers. I knew they were putting me online as some sort of Karen and that nobody would believe me. Just then, I had the realization that my dash cam was recording, like it always does. I quickly told this to the officer, who allowed me to go and retrieve what had just happened prior to the police arriving. I got what I needed and went back to the officer. He played back the recording, and he did see the teenagers laughing and making fun of me through the dash cam. After watching the video back again, he got suspicious.
Hey buddy, can I ask you to do some field sobriety tests for me? Why? She's the one who hit us. So you want to get taken to jail now? Or do you want to prove you're sober? Fine, I'll do it.
I watched as the officer had the teenager walk in a straight line and stand on one leg. He failed the tests. He also blew into a breathalyzer, and it proved that he had been driving under the influence.
You're under arrest for drinking and driving.
That's when the teenager kicked the police and tried to run towards me to attack me, But thankfully I had pepper spray in my purse and I pulled it out and sprayed him in the face. He screamed out in agony and they tried to get back into his car to run, despite not being able to see. However, another officer had showed up just in time and tasered him. He yelped loudly again and fell to the ground writhing in pain. Both officers jumped on him and subdued him so that they could handcuff him. All that time, he tried to fight back by wiggling and trying to get free from them. After a few minutes, a large police van showed up and all of the teenagers were taken away in it. According to the police report, the driver had asked for his one phone call and had used it to call his parents to get them to help him out. However, they were so angry at him that they refused to bail him out or even give him money for a lawyer. The boy was in jail overnight and charged with a DUI, battery of an officer, assault towards me, and for resisting arrest. Despite that, he had not actually hit me. He had tried to, and that was enough for the report. However, once my adrenaline wore off, I began to notice how much pain I was in. I had been so concerned about my daughter and with the teenagers running off that I had ignored the fact that both my back and neck were in agony. Once I had told the police on the scene about this, they called an ambulance for me and took me and my daughter to the hospital. When we were there, they took x-rays and found out that my spine had been damaged and I had whiplash. The pain was so intense and it took months before I finally was able to act the same way that I normally did. I wasn't even able to carry my own daughter around at that time. I was so angry that I contacted a lawyer and had them sue the teenager and his parents. Thankfully, the judge had agreed that they should pay for my medical bills and for my pain and suffering. His parents refused to pay his bills, though, and so he was forced to use his insurance to pay for all the damages he had caused my car and also for the medical attention my daughter and I received. My lawyers also pulled the tape from the traffic lights, and it was proven on video that the teenager's car had hit me. His parents forced him to write me a whole apology letter, and I still have it to this day. I hear that he's been working his ass off at a grocery store just to use the car that belonged to his dad. I think that this was well-deserved for him. What do you think? Hi, my name is Clara, and I am 23 years old. I have an older sister named Lucy and a younger brother named Blake. My husband Carl and I are actually a newlywed couple, and we have been unbelievably happy for the past 2 months. But our wedding was where my relationship with my brother was incredibly skewered. Here is how everything unfolded. My brother is 17 years old, and he had known Carl since he was about 11. Blake and Carl had always clicked the moment that they met, seeing as they had similar interests in games and sports. Carl soon saw Blake as his own brother, and there was never a dull moment when the two of them were together. When Carl proposed to me 2 years ago, Blake was 15 and absolutely ecstatic. He wouldn't stop going on and on about how Carl was going to be officially part of the family. I thought this was incredibly sweet of him and couldn't wait to get married either. My sister Lucy was incredibly excited as well and almost immediately began to sort out decoration preparations.
Dude, guess what? My sister is getting married. Isn't that right, Clara?
I smiled to myself when I heard Blake excitedly say to his friends,
Clara, look at these flower combinations I've come up with.
Naturally, I was very happy that my siblings were also very ecstatic about my engagement to Carl. My parents were also supportive of this, even though our relationship wasn't the most stable. They loved Carl and knew that we would work out well together. My parents even offered to pitch in some for the wedding costs, but I refused, understanding their care but knowing that Carl and I could handle this ourselves. And so Carl and I worked on the wedding preparations for a while, with Blake even wanting to help for a while. But a while after he'd turned 16, things went downhill from there. Blake had suddenly become obsessed with doing anything that would potentially hurt me, physically or emotionally. And the only thing I had to ask was, why? Blake, what are you and your friends doing?
We're just making a short video. Go mind your own business.
I was absolutely shocked. For my own brother to come over and just waste my expensive groceries on a stupid trend and then call me such a degrading word like that. I really couldn't believe that this is how he turned out to be. Because this was the first time that I'd seen him do something like this. I let it drop because I thought that it would be the last time he did. Turns out I was wrong. Blake kept using my stuff and home to make content for himself. He committed heinous acts that I was completely sick of from the start, such as putting glue on my toilet seat, breaking a window in the house, and even using spray paint on my garage door. I tried countless times to complain about this to my parents, but of course neither of them listened. Blake was their favorite child and one of his school's best athletes, so everyone thought he was some sort of kind and respectful student. I was out at dinner one night with my fiancé and my mom, attempting to explain this situation to her again. Mom, have you seen Blake's online videos? Those are all my groceries and my furniture getting destroyed. Can't you just help me talk to him? Huh?
Clara, I really don't see what the problem is. It's only a little bit of lighthearted fun. Just be more nice to him when he goes to visit you.
Be nice to him? How did my mom think I treated my own little brother? I just shook my head and sighed, carrying on and eating my meal. As I attempted to bring it up once more, my mom quickly changed the subject to my wedding and asked if Blake was going to be the best man.
Yeah, we were considering making Blake the best man. Clara, shaken. He won't, though, if he keeps deciding to pull those stupid tricks.
Of course he'll be the best man. He's your damned brother. I better see him up with the groom in a couple of months. And do you mind paying for his tux as well? I just thought that my beautiful daughter would be able to help her brother for the wedding.
Yeah, sure, we'll pay for it. It's not a problem.
There is no way that this is happening right now. I got up and stormed over to the counter, paying for the meal before running out of the restaurant. Carl followed after me whilst my mom sat there looking dazed. That night, Carl and I had a long talk about the issues that I've had with my family. He listened to me carefully while I began to cry, and then calmed me down a bit later. We came to a compromise that for the meantime, Blake will be getting a new suit. But the moment that he does something that crosses the line, we're returning it and kicking him from the groomsmen. I texted my little brother and told him that if he does not stop doing what he does, I'll make sure he pays for it. Blake didn't say anything, but I knew he'd seen it. Luckily, he didn't do anything to me for the next 3 months while I was frantically going around with my sister Lucy to prepare for my wedding. And flash forward to my wedding day, everything was going as normal. Blake was in his suit, which made my parents incredibly happy and teary-eyed. My sister looked absolutely stunning as she greeted guests, and I was excited as I waited for the ceremony to start.
Oh my gosh, Michael, it's great to see you here.
Mom, why is Michael here?
Don't be so dense. So what if your ex-boyfriend wants to celebrate your new journey? Ooh, Blake's invited some of his boys too. Clara, why?
Blake invited people? I couldn't believe it. There are clear rules and invitations, including the maximum amount of +1s you can bring. My brother could only invite one person, but my heart sank when I saw around 3 of his friends standing around and goofing around. I chose to go to my room and wait until it was my turn to come out. When the ceremony began, I walked down the aisle and everything up to the kiss went perfectly. When it was time to cut the cake, though, everything went south from there. As I was cutting into the cake with my now husband, I was hit with a big splash of water. I gasped in shock and my eyes darted around. Oh my God. Blake's friends were laughing maniacally and recording the entire thing. I was dripping from head to toe and began to sob whilst running away. Carl was fuming and asked for the boys to be removed from the venue. Crying in my room, I was found by Carl and he calmed me down. We knew what we had to do. About a week later, my mom called me and forced me to attend Blake's graduation ceremony. I began to protest, but my husband quickly explained that this was the perfect opportunity to get back at him. Students were getting called up as the ceremony began. When Blake was called, everyone could read the words on his cap and gown that said he was a cheater and a thief, and loud talking began erupting through the stadium. Blake looked around with a smile, but it quickly dropped when 2 girls walked up to the stage. Perfect timing. I couldn't help but laugh.
Blake, how could you cheat on me with a girl from another school? You're a sicko and I hope to never speak to you again.
You were the perfect guy until I found out you've been unfaithful to both Emily and me. Absolutely unbelievable. Everybody heard what was going on and began to laugh and talk. Blake fell onto his knees and was crying in embarrassment and partial anger. Nobody was going to let him forget this. Blake's now ex-girlfriend and ex-fling walked up to us and smiled, happy to help us with this. That night, both Lucy and my brother, along with my parents and husband, were all seated at dinner together. Blake was glaring furiously at Lucy, Carl, and I, and so were my parents.
Why would you ever do something like this?
Well, do you not remember what happened at my wedding and everything that Blake had done to me? I'm still surprised that you're on his side after all of this.
On the internet in a terrible way. All my classmates won't respond to my calls.
Well, I'm sorry about that, but honestly, you kind of deserved it for being a real piece of work for Clara.
Well, Clara has a point. Blake, Everything that I've seen you do for the past months was completely unacceptable, and I cannot let you just get away with a bit of online embarrassment. You're gonna be doing housework for Clara and Carl for the next year. My life is ruined. You can't do that. I need to travel and have fun. No way, young man.
I watched in amusement as Daniel dragged Blake outside and my mother followed. I hear Blake screaming once again before their car pulled out of the driveway. Lucy, Carl, and I just high-fived and moved to the couch to watch a movie and celebrate our success. I still love Blake, but I can't wait for him to learn his lesson on not being such a jerk. Thanks for watching.